just gone 12 noon in London, 7 a.m. in Philadelphia, and all around the world. It's time for the Muckrakers. I stole that from Richard Skinner. You might remember it was a Live Aid. That was his announcement. Well, welcome along to the Muckrakers. And here on the Muckrakers, we pledge to continue tackling the most pressing and controversial news issues of our time. Our mission is to provide more light and less heat in our unwavering quest to uncover the truth and to inform, educate, and entertain with dignity and respect. And as always, I say it's vital we don't just ask the questions, but question the answers. And today what we're going to look at the 2022 Nord Stream pipeline attacks and the various accusations going on in the media. And I'm delighted that today is our 65th episode of the Muckrakers. Time to retire, I hear you say. Well, we'll have a look at that sort of side as well. But 65, we've been doing wonderful things, and I can think of no finer couple of gentlemen to help me join the celebration than the wonderful Martin J. and Dr. George Szamuely. How are you both, gentlemen?
Good. How are you, Andrew?
No, good. Surviving. Let me tell you, because it is important. Dr. George Szamuely, he's a senior research fellow at the Global Policy Institute in London. He's written for innumerable publications and is author of Bombs for Peace. Everybody around the world has got a copy now. NATO's Humanitarian War on Yugoslavia. If you haven't got a copy, shame on you. Martin J. is an award-winning journalist, editor of margrebby.org and levantis.me, which has also featured the Muckrakers a few times, so many, many thanks for that. His career has spanned an impressive 30 years, which has seen him work in over 50 countries for a host of big media titles. Now, I was told off saying about him being fired by all the media giants, but actually he quite likes that because he proudly proclaims it on his Twitter page. And CNN said he's a good journalist, but a pain in the backside. But that's what all journalists should be. Well, before we do a big deep dive into the 2022 Nord Stream pipelines attack, let's turn our attention to the US election and the media protection of Queen Kamala, as she's properly called. We wanted to talk about this because it is interesting how all of a sudden she's being protected by the media, trumpeted as the new hope, if you like. What's your take on this, George?
Well, it's quite a remarkable thing. I don't think there's ever been anything like it in supposed democracies. I mean, this is a woman who has been imposed upon the party and essentially imposed upon the American electorate, who hasn't won a single vote. She didn't even win a single vote in the 2020 election. She dropped out from the Democratic primaries before the first votes were counted. And in this case, she didn't even run in any of the primaries. And so it was just a decision made by, we don't exactly know who, but obviously a very small group of people who said that Biden needs to go. And we're just going to replace him with Harris, who up until that moment had been a laughingstock. I mean, she would have been deemed a completely ridiculous person, a deeply unlikable person. I mean, as unlikable as Hillary Clinton. A massive series of failures on her watch as vice president, including she was the border czar, and she was very annoying with her with her really awful cackle. So now she's been thrust in that position, and if you're a journalist and you follow American electoral politics, then your primary responsibility would be, well, okay, now tell us something about yourself. Tell us why you want to be president. Tell us what you intend to do as president. What's your take on Gaza? What's your take on Iran? What's your take on Russia, Ukraine? The topic we're going to talk about later, Nord Stream. In other words, you want to know, well, you're going to be president theoretically in a few months' time. What do you intend to do in that job? And instead, the media, who act as essentially enablers of the Democratic Party, said, well, if she doesn't want to do any interviews, then she doesn't have to do any interviews. I mean, the polls are working for her. She's, riding high. We can keep pushing out these silly articles about how there's waves and waves of excitement and enthusiasm for Kamala in the country, totally made up. And then we can just keep writing it. And then you think, well, you're supposed to be a journalist, and you're supposed to be grilling the people in power. I mean, your job is, find out what does she want to do. And I said, well, if it's working, it's working. Let her continue doing what she's doing. I've never seen anything like that.
Quite extraordinary. You're absolutely right, Martin.
It is extraordinary. I think we're living in an era now where, for the certainly last 10 years, it has started to become acceptable for Western leaders to basically just brush off media. Say, no, I don't have media. No. I mean, when Boris Johnson got into office, I was quite shocked after the first few days. You would have expected a lineup of high-profile interviews with all the broadsheets, discuss policy, and he just shunned it all. And I think that was we tend to look in Britain. We tend to look down on other countries in the global south, where we say this sort of thing is quite normal in Africa and the Middle East. It's very normal in the Middle East, for leaders to just completely shun media. But now it's becoming fashionable. And when you look at Kamala Harris or whatever she's called, I think George is right. I think she is pretty lackluster. I don't think she is that popular at all. I wonder how truthful all these polls are and the media coverage she's getting. But she does seem to be a product of something bigger and more nefarious and darker. She seems to be a product of the deep state, of the industrial military complex, who have all got together in smoke-filled rooms and said, look, this is all we've got. It was her or Joe, and Joe was going to run us into the ground and give Trump an easy pass back to the White House. So let's put all we can behind Kamala and see if we can wing it. Now, I don't believe that she's refused media. I think people who are controlling her, as I said, the industrial military complex and other uber elites in America, plus Obama, who's also got his hand on the strings, I think they've all come together and decided, let's avoid media for her. Let's keep her out of the media spotlight. Or every now and again, we can actually create a little media scene of our own. She was getting on a plane a couple of weeks ago, and just surprise, there were these school kids there doing something, Andrew. I can't remember what they were doing, but there was she managed to give a soundbite to a journalist who just put the mic in her, and she was off. I think you're going to see a few of those. But it just gives you an indication of just how corrupt media are in both in America and Britain. That you can accept that you can go along with that. Where are the hit jobs on Kamala Harris? Where is the in-depth reports, the in-depth investigations into who she really is? Basically, journalists have become very, very servile and have become pawns of the deep state. And this is the reason why I think she's not doing any interviews. And quite rightly, if you were the media handler, if you had got the contract to handle media for Harris, probably you'd be having nightmares thinking, how do we drag this woman into a TV studio and give her media training when she probably doesn't even know where Israel is on the map of the world? She probably couldn't find Ukraine. She probably couldn't mention one European leader other than Macron. She's just going to embarrass herself. She's just going to fall into a black hole. And pundits in America constantly say, I've heard this since I was a very young journalist, American presidential races are not won on foreign policy. Well, we'll see. I think 9/11 did very well for George W. Bush. I think it's oversimplification to say that. A lot of people are worried that she is going to show people the real extent of just how stupid she is, and not just stupid and ignorant. It's good. It's good if you can only get one of those, but if you've got both of those, you're in real trouble when it comes to the press. So I think that probably explains why, we are not seeing her on television explaining to us her views. I mean, there's an awful lot of stuff on YouTube, I don't know if you noticed, of her dancing. I mean, she's just dancing all the time. It's just clip after clip. She's just dancing all the bloody time, dancing. And not much stuff of her talking, but when she does talk about, when she tries to explain complicated stuff, like what a cloud is, in IT terms, a cloud is this place up there where you put your data, and she can't really do it. She's not an orator. Now, the thing is with Biden is he was talking gibberish at the end. He was not completing his sentences. He was calling his children wrong names and all this sort of thing. But at least there was a contingent level of video clips on the internet of him speaking quite lucidly in the 1980s. He was at some point a good speaker. He was quite articulate. Harris doesn't have that. All she's got is really gibberish stuff of her talking about Ukraine. There's this country in Europe somewhere, and there's Russia, and Russia's a big country, and Russia invaded Ukraine, so that's not a good thing. I mean, that's it, really. That's her foreign policy. That's it summed up in just a few seconds. Maybe I didn't get the accent. So I think these polls, which show her neck and neck or even leading Trump, I think if we carry on with the media blackout, I think Trump will actually get the edge. He will start to work on this, and he will start to force situations where she has to face the press. So that will be exciting. But for the moment, they think they can win this just by switching her off completely.
Yeah, it is extraordinary. And there's been some glorious clips out there with Kamala, and that's how you pronounce her name, and her word salad. One of the things I've been determined to do on the Muckrakers is to get her name right, because she spent a fortune and talk about surrounding herself with kids. Well, in the 2016 campaign, she did exactly that and gave all the wrong pronunciations of her name. It is Kamala, as in comma, the punctuation, and la on the end of it. So, but everybody in the media continues to get that wrong. The other thing we predicted. Oh, well, there you go. There's great advice from the Muckrakers. The other thing we predicted was that the orange outlasted Joe Biden in a sort of tip of the hat to the lettuce and Listras. I had this little campaign here on the Muckrakers about an orange and whether that would survive Joe Biden, which would run out of juice first. Well, the orange won. It is interesting because you talk about the media. They have basically said that Kamala will have a debate with Donald Trump twice. Do you think such a debate will change the election outcome, George?
No, I don't think it will. But the debate thing is very, very interesting because that one debate that they've arranged was actually arranged between the Biden and the Trump campaigns, and it's supposed to take place on ABC News. And the Trump campaign, I think, perfectly reasonably said, well, I think we should cancel that and arrange some new debates because that was a different campaign, and we don't agree with this, doing it on this ABC News format. Then the media went into this high dudgeon, again, repeating Democratic Party talking points. Oh, Trump is yellow. Trump is scared. Trump is a chicken. Of course, Trump is never scared of any debates. I mean, he may not be a particularly great debater, but he's not somebody who's actually scared of debates. So Trump then said, okay, fine, we'll have this debate, but I want to have 3 other debates. Which is what normally you have. I mean, normally there are at least 3 presidential debates, at least. And Harris has not agreed to that. And the media are silent about it. The same media that was so indignant that the Trump campaign said, well, let's cancel this debate, which was arranged with Biden, and work out some new debates. No, that was the media. This was, absolutely outraged over Trump. Here, there's nothing. You've got nothing in store. The fact that Harris doesn't want to have another debate. So I think there will be just this one debate, which is quite soon, I think in September the 10th, I think, on ABC News. She's not going to do any more debates. And I think she expects to just glide by with George Stephanopoulos, or Slapopopoulos, as Trump likes to call him, and that will be that. And I agree with Martin. I think they're going to keep her away from any interviews. She'll go on one of these late night comedy shows, the Stephen Colbert, which is just going to be, she'll be basking in his adulation, and that will be that. And it's an amazing thing that something that we simply have no idea what her policies are. I mean, her campaign website still hasn't spelled out what are her policies. What's the foreign policy? What's the policy on Gaza? What anything? So it's all just being put out, like the story, for instance, that, oh, she's going to be tougher on Israel than Biden has been. No evidence for that, but it's just a way of actually keeping the Democrats, those Democrats who are unhappy with Biden. Hey, well, we know you're not happy with Biden, but look, Harris is really going to be tough on Netanyahu. She's never said that, never said anything like that. So you can just keep manufacturing this and saying, and like, now we have this economic policy. She's basically cribbed it from Trump, literally. I mean, the whole thing's just been cribbed from him. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. And you're saying, oh, well, Kamala's going to, deliver a major speech outlining her economic policy. She doesn't have any economic policy. So the question is, will this succeed? And I don't know. I mean, will there be any serious mainstream journalists who say, look, this is an insult to us? I mean, what kind of a profession are we in? And will they quit? Or will they just do what they did to Biden in 2020, just allow him to sit at home in his basement and just keep attacking Trump? And that maybe that's the strategy. They just keep, churning out story after story about Trump.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Well, what I found there was a fascinating survey which people should look at. Vincent Pons and Caroline Le Pennec, they did an analysis of 56 different TV debates across 31 elections globally. They interviewed about 94,000 people in UK, USA, Germany, Canada, and a few other countries. And they determined that actually TV debates make absolutely no difference whatsoever. A quick word from you, Martin, before we go to the break.
I have to agree with what George said. He really nailed it. And in particular, when you talk about Kamala duplicating, replicating Trump's policies, she's even done it. She even did it with Israel. I mean, she's got nothing to say, but she's got a couple of sound bites. And so she goes on the stage, all those Democrats, bless them, are cheering her. And she said, in Israel, we're going to get our people out. And everybody cheers at that. But that was basically until a couple of weeks ago what distinguished Trump was that his policy, his number one policy on Israel, was to get the hostages out. And then that was top of the pyramid. Then from there on, we would go further. So she is copying. Somebody has made a real decision. They made a tactical decision, which is that let's try and move to the center ground, replicate as much from the Trump camp, and hope that the debate and the decision ultimately which comes is based on personalities only, which I think is a very, very dangerous game to play. I don't think that's a very smart move at all. My guess is, as a very skeptical, old, seasoned journalist who's seen it all, I'm pretty sure there's going to be one or two staged, scripted interviews coming up, probably with CNN, or where she'll have all the questions beforehand. She'll give it to her experts. They'll media train in the studio beforehand, and it'll be pretty plastic, pretty rigid, wooden, hollow stuff. But that's probably coming in the pipeline, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, I'm talking of pipelines. A beautiful segue. Well, Kamala, I'm sure we'll get on the show, but at some stage we've got brilliant producers here. They work miracles, so act surprised. But talking of pipelines, a drunken evening, a rented yacht, the real story of the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. That's coming up straight after these messages.